Hey there, everybody. This is Beyond the Beach, career conversations with graduates of Cal State Long Beach. I'm your host, Kenji Klein, Associate Professor of Management at the College of Business at California State University, Long Beach, where I teach business strategy, general management, and organization theory. In this show, I interview former students and recent graduates about life after Long Beach. Our conversations cover topics like how my guests chose a career path, how they landed their first job, what it's been like to navigate the chaos, challenges, and opportunities of their early careers. My hope is that you will find their experiences useful and inspiring in helping you chart your path beyond the beach. My guest today is Mireya Lara. Mireya was a student in my business strategy class back in 2017, and I think you were also in my organization theory class like the semester before that, right? Yeah. And now works as a senior business analyst at American Honda Finance. Hey, Mireya, it's really, really great to see you again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So let's dive right in. I'm wondering if you could just briefly kind of introduce yourself to the audience, who you are, when you graduated, what you studied when you were a student here, and then what you're doing now.
Okay. So as Kenji mentioned, my name is Mireya Lara. I was a graduate from 2017, College of Business Administration. I actually did a double major, so I was in management and operation and supply chain management. So I took advantage of those extra courses, and they did come in handy. I currently work for American Honda Finance as a senior business analyst, and I'm currently taking a lot of courses, to eventually become a manager. So a lot of leadership classes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I actually am involved in two huge projects. So for Honda, every year we do what it's called an NH circle.
Okay.
So a lot of work associates from different companies. So American Honda Motor is our parent company,
Right.
and AHFC is one of the subsidiaries. And of course, we have all of the Honda manufacturing plants in different states. So, if you have any idea of how to improve the company, looking into Honda's philosophies, to be a company that society wants to exist, they're open to hear that. So there's basically you become a team and you come up with ideas. So I'm part of one of those teams.
Oh, okay, cool.
So we're hoping to, if we win that, that eventually that process change or whatever it is that we're working on could actually become a reality.
Right.
So we'll be presenting to management eventually.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
So, I guess I kind of will want to get into this in a little bit, but then if your major was management and supply chain management, but you're in the finance part of American Honda, senior business analyst, is that typically management supply chain stuff, or is that usually a different kind of a function?
It's a different kind of a function. So basically what American Honda Finance does is so we're wholesale, and wholesale is dealer facing, right? So we actually lend to the dealerships.
Okay.
We provide the money for them to finance American Honda Motor cars.
I see.
And then we're also retail, which is like customer facing.
Right.
Right. So I've had the opportunity to work on both ends for the finance company. So when I first, long story short, how I came to be at American Honda Finance was shortly after graduating.
Right.
I landed an internship. So this was in the summer of 2017.
Okay.
So Honda, they came on campus and they actually were looking for interns.
Right.
I was hesitant to apply, because sometimes we are our biggest critiques. Yeah. We're afraid that maybe we don't have that much expertise,
right,
or that, our resumes don't look that good.
Yeah.
So I was actually hesitant to even apply, but, I took that risk.
Yeah.
I was like, the worst thing that could happen is they don't call me.
Right.
So when they actually told me, that I was chosen, I was surprised. I went to my interview and I actually landed the internship. When I saw the group of kids that were selected, I'm talking people that went to UCLA, USC, then I'm here, the only Hispanic one there, and it's like I was afraid of not meeting expectations.
Right.
So I went above and beyond, and not only did I do the tasks that were asked for me, but, instead of going off on my breaks, I would ask for more work.
Right.
I would try to get to meet the other managers, like offer to help, try to learn as much as I could.
And this is during the internship?
This is during the internship.
So let me ask you a question about the internship. So this is when you were still a student or after you had graduated that you applied?
So I believe I was still, it was actually my last semester.
Okay.
When they came and they were doing it was like a career fair that they had. Yeah.
Right.
So.
And so you showed up at the career fair. Did it go through like, I don't know, do we have a career office or the Center for Professional Development, or it was just you showed up at the career fair and you said, hey, I'm interested?
Yes.
Okay.
So I think they did it in, like, by the food court, if I'm not mistaken. That's where they set up.
Okay.
So you could pretty much say that I was completely lost my last year. I was like finishing school.
Right.
I had no work experience because my focus was, like making sure that I had my degree.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, now what?
Yeah.
So my last year, what I did was I got really involved with networking.
Okay.
So we have the College of Business Administration.
Yeah.
We have the International Student Association. I believe that's what it's called.
Right.
So thanks to them, it was that I was able to network. And I'm talking, it was just a few group of kids, but, we had someone taking pictures, like professional pictures, getting involved with LinkedIn.
Okay.
Like we had no idea what that was.
Right.
So I believe it's huge. Like,
so you had a good LinkedIn profile because of the involvement with that organization.
Yes. And it's just getting yourself surrounded by people that have that passion and that are also like looking for job opportunities and that tell you how to speak.
Right.
How to look, like if it wasn't for them, I would have never met Sandy Caja. So she works for the Regional Hispanic Chamber of Commerce in Long Beach.
Right.
So she actually was able to get me close to the dean of Michael of College of Business.
Right.
So they have
Michael.
They have a huge mentorship program.
Right.
So and it's people that like they already are professionals. So I was able to get matched with somebody I worked for government affairs, I believe, for the BNSF Railroad.
Oh, the railroad company, yeah.
So, she allowed us to go to like networking events, get close to other professionals, and it's just, it's true. Like you have to put yourself out there, get to know people, get to know their business. Like,
yeah, for sure. The other thing that jumps out at me, right, is, and so I'm first generation college attendee, right? Blue collar background. You kind of similar, right?
Yes,
maybe?
correct.
Yeah, and so it's just like when I was at college, and I wasn't at a business school. I was doing liberal arts, and there was no support for people like me, and I had no idea what it meant to like. I didn't even know what they really did in businesses. So when you're describing these things, I'm like, wow, that would have been amazing. Like if I had that opportunity to meet real business people and see what they do and understand how that works and how do you present yourself and stuff. So when I graduated, I struggled to find a job because it was just like, I knew how to study. I was really good at that, but other stuff I didn't know how to do. And in some ways, it's probably the reason I'm an academic now, because I wasn't trained for anything else. I didn't know how to do business. So it's really cool. And I guess what you're saying is it was that involvement with the student organizations focused on business that was really helpful, that taught you the things that were useful for you.
Correct. Yeah. So I think the hardest thing was, there are so many resources, right? We have a lot of like groups and people willing to help, but then again, not everyone has that time, right?
Right.
So I try to find what would work for me and, what was more flexible. And like I said, like thanks to them and just like taking me in, feeling welcome. Because like I said, it was a very small group of people. It wasn't like one of those huge clubs at Cal State Long Beach, and it's like sometimes, when they're too big, you're not embarrassed, but almost like, like I'm just one little ant compared to all these. Whereas when it was that smaller circle, like it felt more like a little family.
Yeah. I think that's also a really interesting observation because a lot of times, like on the networking advice that you get is to go and meet all these people, right? And, sometimes it's better to just meet like a few key people and develop real connection with them.
Quality over quantity.
Quality over quantity. Yep, exactly right. And that's really where, you have an opportunity to learn and stuff, right? People actually care about how you're doing because they know who you are, instead of like, oh, you're one of 50, business cards they got that night. So, yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, they become meaningful connections.
Right.
I still keep contact with one of my mentors that I met through Sandy Cajas.
Right.
And then I also have a few of the members on Instagram. Actually we had this project with a German student exchange that came over. I still have Nadine and I believe the other girls and Sarah. I still have them on Instagram, and I see how they're doing, and it's just amazing. Like, thanks to those projects, to networking.
And just for the audience, what you're referring to is, Cal State Long Beach has this connection with this university in Hamburg, and you were participating in that thing with the German students, the exchange program, where they came over here and worked on a project together.
Yeah, and that's what I mean with building long-term relationships, and it's just like, just seeing how they're doing, that they're doing well, it just brings joy to you, and to move forward, and it inspires you, how they're doing and seeing them. Right.
And these are people who you knew when you were students, and they're doing stuff, so you realize that things can be done, and you got opportunities and stuff.
Definitely.
So you got the internship, and you busted your butt when you had the internship, because you, to some extent, maybe felt like you had to prove your value because you were seeing people from like fancy schools.
Yes. So I am my biggest critique. Right. So I like you mentioned, not all of us come from families that have graduated, that went to universities. I am the first in my family to graduate from a university, and actually the first female.
Right.
So it was a huge pressure on myself to actually like get through school and make sure that I made my parents proud, because I always said to myself, like, seeing the struggle that they had, moving around, not having job stability, living off hand-me-downs, that I didn't want to live that way. So I pushed hard to get through school, like my environment sometimes wasn't the best, and it's not easy, especially if I know that not everyone, gets things handed to them. A lot of people have to work and go to school. We're all struggling in some way or the other, but just getting through school to me was very meaningful. Just getting that degree. So when I saw, the other interns, and, we assume things, but at the same time, once you start hearing, their parents are professionals, and I'm like, oh, well, my dad's a gardener.
Right.
My mom's a stay-at-home mom. But out of those 12, I believe it was around 12, maybe 8 other interns, I was actually me and my friend, we became friends. We were the only ones that had our internship extended.
Oh, okay.
So in that period of time, I actually opened up to my supervisor and let her know, I'm really interested in finding a job, a stable job. So she actually pushed me to apply.
Right.
I got turned down, I think, twice.
Okay.
So I was worried, I'm like, I don't have that much job experience, I should have worked and gone to school. But, because I didn't give up, I fortunately was not given, but I interviewed for a job and I got it. So
this was not just an extension of the internship, it was a conversion from an internship to a full-time position.
So I believe my internship was June or July, and I landed a full-time position by September.
Okay.
So, that to me, looking back, now that I see, all these contingent workers are looking for jobs, that's pretty, amazing for someone to get hired on as a full-time associate. So once that happened, I felt like I still had to prove myself that I was worthy of that position.
Right.
So you see kind of how it goes.
There's the imposter syndrome, like, is a real thing. Like, you just feel like a lot of times, like, I'm in this position and I don't necessarily know if I belong here, because you see, like, on the surface, other people look like they're more qualified, and then you feel so much like, I got to prove myself. And it can be emotionally really exhausting, right? So that's the downside, and probably a pretty heavy downside. The upside is sometimes you end up working so hard that people are like, wow, right? And then these opportunities open up for you.
So thankfully, I consider myself a hard worker.
Yeah.
I enjoy helping others. Very humble person. Yeah. And I feel like that's something that people really like about me.
Right.
I didn't go in there like, I got a job,
Right.
No, I
have a question about that. I'm curious, how much of that do you think is just general human nature, and how much you think it's a specific culture of Honda?
Yes.
In the sense that, Honda's a Japanese company, and the Japanese have humility is one of the prime virtues, right, in Japanese culture.
See, they say something about, like, you drink the Honda Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
I love Honda.
Yeah.
I love what it stands for.
Right.
I fell in love when I realized how many, the work-life balance that they have, the fact that they treat you like family.
Right.
They look after you.
Right.
HR's great.
Yeah.
Everyone treats each other with respect and dignity. Like, we give so much back to the community.
Right.
We do, follow all of our philosophies.
Right.
Like I said, we're a company that society wants to exist, and I've seen it, in real life. I've had volunteer opportunities where I've been able to help, even pack food.
Right.
They've done, where they go feed the homeless. They do clothing drives.
Right.
Every Christmas, they adopt children from Boys and Girls Club, and they buy gifts. I was able to do that too.
Yeah. It's really interesting because they're it became like a fad for companies to tout their values, right? But I do think there's a real difference between a company that actually walks the walk, and one that just talks the talk. So it's great to hear that this is a place that really seems to walk the walk, and that you feel that, you're living in the place where the values are real.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's cool.
During COVID, they actually started manufacturing masks. And
Okay.
They went out of their way to hand out masks. They actually give you the opportunity to go volunteer. We have so many benefits where it's to help others.
Right.
They match if you contribute. It's just so many things. But even just they value you as a person. Honda gave me my first job.
Right.
And now that I've grown in my career, so like I mentioned, I had that first job.
Yeah.
So I was a compliance analyst for Dealer Financial Services. So that's when I mentioned I worked wholesale, which was dealer facing.
Got it.
And I had different managers, because in Honda, they really do rotate you. So you could try different fields. So I got to see that, people do move up.
Right.
So I knew that there was opportunities there, and I would always hear people work there for 20, 30 plus years.
Right.
So, that goes back to stability.
Yeah.
And that's a company I want to work for. I had a family, so I wanted stability.
Yeah.
I didn't want to think the next day I was going to lose my job,
Right. I mean, it's just so interesting because, I'm interviewing different former students, and everyone's having really different experiences. And so, a couple students are just like, yeah, this place is terrible, and I had to get out, 3 months, 2 months, a year. Oh, I stayed 3 years, and I really regret it, right? So it's really nice, also that there are people who have these experiences yeah, I'm at this place, and it's really great. I'm really happy here, and they treat me well. So that's fantastic to hear. I'm curious. So a lot of times I'll ask, well, why'd you move from this job to that job, or how'd you find the next job? But you've been in the same company. Yes. So then I'm curious, can you talk to me a little bit about how you were able to advance, or either moving up or lateral moves and stuff. Like, why do you think you were able to make those moves, or how did it happen, and things like that?
So when I became a compliance analyst, it was more like compliance related. So like a lot of auditors, standard operational procedures, reviewing a lot of our loan portfolio. So just making sure that everything was pretty much legal, right?
Yeah.
That we were charging the correct amount of interest.
Right.
But it didn't seem like it was a lot of work.
Right.
I almost felt like there's certain periods where it got really busy, and then there was periods that were
Right.
like really slow. So I actually asked to get more work. So
Okay.
I took on more work, which was, let's say, another coworker's tasks.
Mm-hmm.
So that helped me build, my skill set. So I
Right.
started doing more of like commercial loan wires. So like working with Treasury,
Okay.
funding, doing reconciliations, like
Okay.
more daily stuff. But it was a huge responsibility. I'm talking like you're sending millions of dollars, right? But
Right.
it's getting to know more people in different departments. It's putting
Right.
yourself out there. And then I feel like
So you weren't just satisfied to be like, oh, cool, I can cruise. I got my work done.
no, and I feel like that goes back to the culture, right?
Yeah.
Like it almost felt like I was getting paid for not doing anything.
Right.
And I don't like feeling like I'm taking advantage,
Yeah.
even though Conda's huge, right?
Right.
It's like, no, like I love working for this company, I want to learn more and feel like I'm actually being productive.
Right.
Even though I was, but
Right.
in my
But you still wanted to do more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I feel like the most crucial part in my career was the most difficult part. And at first I almost saw it like a burden and then a challenge. And then I was so proud of it. And I
Right.
feel like if I hadn't taken on more tasks, which were, math has not been my forte.
Uh-huh.
I don't know how I passed my business stat class. You know how they say, like, don't be afraid to, like, learn new things? Like,
Yeah.
even if it's not your strongest skill set, everyone could learn,
Right.
right?
Right.
So I was actually given tasks that were, like, our senior financial analyst moved to a different department, so his work had to get dispersed, like,
Right. To
right?
different people.
Yeah. But I had like 3 of the most important reports.
Okay.
So these like operational trend reports, like
Right.
the budget versus forecast, like all these presentations that went to upper management, like
Right.
Japanese,
Yeah.
and that went through our senior manager to review.
Right.
Like all these Excel and like
Right.
formulas and macros. I was just like, I felt like I bit more than I could chew.
Because you were not a finance major, so you hadn't worked with a lot of this stuff before.
And a lot
Yeah.
of it was like accounting stuff,
Right, accounting
And
and
in
finance,
management, it's like it's a little bit of everything,
Yeah.
but you're not like an SME
Yeah.
in like accounting. So I proved myself wrong because I
Right.
thought I couldn't do it, and I did.
Right.
Like I was able to do it for almost a year. So I was doing my job
Uh-huh.
and a lot of his reports.
Right.
And I did an excellent job. And I feel like because I did that, I put myself more at view with upper management.
Mhm.
And
Right.
my name was in a lot of the emails, so they saw, like,
Right.
that name became...
Yeah, you got visibility
Yeah.
and
So
some credibility there.
I feel like that really helped move me to where I'm at now,
Right.
because I was able to add that to my resume.
Yeah.
So if you feel like you're doing a job and they give you extra tasks and you want to push back, I mean, obviously everyone's different, right?
Sure.
But don't see it like a burden.
Right.
See it like it's opportunity for growth. You're
Right.
growing your skill set.
Yeah.
So now that I look back, I think I'm grateful that I was given more
Right.
opportunities. It's something that I wasn't comfortable with.
Yeah.
But, I learned, and I say that I'm good at it.
Yes. So a couple things jump out at me.
Yeah.
So we were talking earlier, you said that you had listened to an earlier interview, right, the one with Allison. And so I think Allison and I talked about this interesting balance where she also advanced because she took on extra work, right? But she came into a situation where the company where she was doing it wasn't valuing it, so they weren't sort of reciprocating, right? So I think there is this question, but it still benefited her because she had developed her skill set that allowed her to get her next job, turned out to be a different place. But I do think there is this balance between, it depends on the place you're working at, right? So in your case, what you're saying is Honda really values its people. And so for you to learn that additional stuff was because it didn't feel like a burden to you because you wanted to get back to this company that was treating you well.
Yes.
And probably, like you were saying, you were getting noticed, and that ended up benefiting you in terms of your position in Honda as well. So I think people have to be careful, though, because you can be at a company that they're just going to keep giving you more and more and more and more.
Yeah.
And then you're not going to get anything out of it. You may learn, but they're going to exploit that. So I think there's an interesting balance that happens in an organization that people need to think through. But it's great that you're in a context where you felt that it made sense for you to do that. The other thing that I'm curious about is, this wasn't an area that you had been strong in before, so there was a potential for failure, right? And I am curious because I don't know if you remember, it's a long time ago, but in Management 425, we did spend a little bit of time talking about Honda. Maybe we didn't do it in your section. We talked about Honda, and one of the things that Honda is known for is a high tolerance of failure because they believe that failure is important for learning.
Yeah.
And they'd rather have people failing and learning than people too cautious, never learning anything, and the company can't progress. So I'm curious, do you think did you actually notice in Honda that there is this sort of acceptance that you try things and if it doesn't work out, it's okay because you've learned from that thing? And if so, did that have anything to do with your willingness to take this on, or was it just more just like you just wanted to give this a shot?
Well, like I mentioned, Honda has associates that have been there for 20, 30 plus years.
Right.
So they really invest in their associates. We actually have what we call Honda Learning Centers. So if there's something that you're not familiar with, you could take courses.
Right.
They have an open door policy. If you're experiencing burnout, which I did, I did talk to management and let them know, hey, this report might take me longer than it used to because I have all this on my plate.
Yeah.
So they're very aware. I remember that, you mentioned everything about different companies have different organizational structures.
Mm-hmm.
Honda's huge on that. So we have different visions. Right now we're working on 2030 vision. So they're very open about informing what it is that they're looking for.
Right.
Some people might think that Honda is a step behind, but in reality, because I had the opportunity now that I've traveled and met people that work in manufacturing and listened to what they have to say, we're very cautious of what we produce, right? What we put on the street, anything that has our name.
Right.
So
full disclosure, by the way, I have a Honda Accord and a Honda Odyssey. Those are the cars I drive. So
yeah, so we care about everything that we do.
Right.
Right. And I say we, even though I don't work directly building cars.
Right. You're not in the the motors section.
I feel because I drank the Honda Kool-Aid that we're all one family.
Right.
Right. If we feel like something's not right within our philosophy, they address it. Right. So we're moving into electric vehicles, right? So we're rearranging everything, but we are being very cautious of what we do.
Right.
Whether it's how we would affect the environment, how are we going to help our consumers, how are we going to inform them. So it's maybe we might not be the first ones to have electric vehicles or any kind of product.
Right.
But they put so much effort into the research and development and to really getting informed before we pretty much put anything out in the street.
Right.
And I feel like if you drive a Honda or if you've known the brand, I feel like that's true.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a reason we keep buying them.
Yeah.
So.
But I feel like what they say and the way that they treat their associates, it's true. Yeah. And it matches. You don't just hear it, that Honda's a great company to work for. It really is.
So I'm curious how that's maintained. In your opinion, what is it that allows that to actually permeate the entire organization and that keeps it real instead of just platitudes?
Because we have so many resources available to us, like news updates. We have meetings where we're all welcomed. They actually moved us. So Honda Finance was in a different location in Torrance, but they moved us to American Honda Motor. But even when we weren't in the same building,
Right.
they always welcomed us. Like, it made us feel like we were always part of Honda Motor.
Yeah.
They always inform us. They give us news updates of everything that's going on. They
Right.
make us feel like we're part of a team.
Yeah.
If someone has a 20-year anniversary or it's 5-year, like, they'll post it.
Right.
They'll let people know. They'll have stories about people and their background, and there's people that share photos of the Hondas that they drive, whether it's a
Right.
motorcycle or any Honda product.
Right.
It's just so many resources that we have. We have a Starbucks
Okay.
in the corporate
Yeah.
office. We see they just did like a Honda museum. They brought all the race cars, the
Okay.
motorcycles. Like, it's just, they make us feel like, look, these are the products that
Right.
that you guys helped put out in the market. You guys did this.
So the company is putting a lot of attention into
They're huge on associate engagement.
right, that, and then making sure that people are aware of what the culture is supposed to be, and they put some energy into making sure that the culture is maintained.
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting. So one of the things I'm curious about is, in terms of your career, right, in terms of the workplace, it's been a great place, but then obviously there's got to be some challenges, right, with the work stuff. And you've talked a little bit about the burnout that you were experiencing. I'm just curious if you could talk a little bit about, if there are any setbacks or challenges in the workplace.
Yes.
And like if you have any advice for how did you deal with them, or any advice for how someone should deal with those kind of things.
So I was in my compliance analyst position for about 5 years.
Right.
So I was at a period when I was like too comfortable,
Okay.
right? And I was like, I've been here for 5 years. Like, this is too much.
Yeah.
I have to do something. I have to either move up or ask, like, what are my career options? Because I didn't want to feel like that's it. Like, I made it this far and I'm going to be in this position forever, right?
Right.
But like I mentioned, Honda keeps the associates for years and years and years. So it's really hard to find a different job.
Right.
There was hardly any job openings.
Right.
So.
Internally, because people stay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Because why wouldn't you, right?
Right. So there's not a lot of openings.
Yeah. So, that's something that I was really, having difficulty with.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing, too, was, like I mentioned, you hardly saw anyone getting hired right after having the internship, right?
Right.
The normal route would be being at a call center or working your way up. I didn't go that route.
I see.
So that kind of, was a setback for me, because when I wanted to apply for different positions, they were like, well, you don't have this background.
I see.
Right? You didn't get to work the field.
Right.
So that's where I almost felt like my options were running low, like a lot of closed doors.
Yeah.
So, I feel like you get to that point in your career where you don't want to feel like you're just stuck.
Yep.
But I felt that way.
Right.
But, I had just recently had my second child.
Right.
Right? So she was little. And now that I look back, it might have been a blessing in disguise, because maybe it wasn't the time to move.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
Like, I had too much on my plate.
Yeah.
And, when I felt ready again and more confident, after having some failed interviews, just really realizing you have to build your skill set again.
Right.
Learn to do interviews, right? Build your resume again, right? Because you just leave that to the side and then you forget that
and then
that's
you pick it up
important.
several years later, you've got no practice. Interesting.
Exactly. So it's like, if you don't use your skills, you lose them.
Right.
So I brought my LinkedIn back up,
Right.
made it up to date, and it's like you get so busy in your work that you forget all these important things, right? Keeping your resume up to date,
right?
Making sure you're still networking.
Right. Anything next?
In one particular department where I was in for most of my career, which is around 5 years, we experienced a lot of turnover, right? So, there's a lot of movement around what we call the regions and centers. And in that department specifically, I would assist a lot of our call center employees. So around almost every year, it almost felt like you're retraining them. And not only was that kind of a setback, but also with our managers. I had around like 4 managers within the time I was in that department. So, whenever I felt comfortable enough to ask for a promotion or a move, it was, well, that manager's no longer there,
Right.
show your worth ethic to the next manager. How do they work?
So you were you had to start over every time you got a new manager.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's frustrating at a point, especially because, I was actually going to start school to become a notary public.
Okay.
So, at work they actually have a program where if you go back to school, but it's something that will benefit the company, like they
Right.
may assist with the funds.
Yeah.
So, I had all that approval from my manager and from HR, and then, that manager left the company.
Oh.
So when the next one came on board, they didn't really think that was a need for notary public.
Right.
So it kind of like felt like at the moment I didn't know how to feel, but
Yeah.
now that I look back, I feel like it was right. Now that I started working like with the budget and
Right.
stuff, I kind of saw where they were coming from, where it wasn't really like cost effective.
Got it.
But in the moment, you get excited. Oh, I'm going to go back to school and I'm going
Right.
to get my public notary certificate. And
Yeah. And then to have it pulled out.
yeah.
Like you think you're going to go there and have it pulled out. It's kind
Yeah.
of pulled away from you. So I'm imagining too, though, that it's like it's got to happen relatively frequently to people that their managers get promoted or moved or go to a different company, and then you're starting all over again with a new manager.
Yeah.
So how did you manage that? Like, was it just, okay, now I got to get nose to the grindstone again so I can develop some credibility with the new manager, or was there anything else that you could do to sort of help that?
I think that's the reason behind too why I took more workload.
Right.
Because I wanted to show them that it wasn't just me doing my compliance portion of my job. I was
Yeah.
doing more of like financial analysis,
Right.
A lot of the wire transactions. I was working with Treasury. I was working with different departments, and they saw that, but it was just like really showing my worth ethic and in my performance appraisals every
Yeah.
year. So it was kind of like, okay, I have 2 more years, like to kind of show that I'm an SME in whatever I'm doing.
Right.
But it did feel frustrating at times because it's like instead of it being like, okay, I've been here for all these years, it's like you've only seen me work for a
Yeah.
year,
Yeah.
right? So
That's tough.
that was kind of my setback. And even like building relationships out with, like I said, like our call centers and regions,
Right.
they wouldn't really see that because they would only work with me for like about a year.
Right.
So
Yeah, it's interesting too because like a lot of times, when we're talking about turnover, at least, in my discipline, a lot of times we're talking about, well, turnover is not good because it's like really expensive. You have to retrain people and all those things. But it's kind of interesting to think about. It also just has this, and we're talking about, there's institutional knowledge that gets lost and stuff like that. But I think it's what you're pointing out is it also just has a really big impact on the people that are left behind, right?
Yeah.
So it's like if it's your manager is left, and suddenly you've got to rebuild credibility with a new manager, and that's a lot of additional kind of work, and it can be frustrating for you, and as well as like when you're got new people coming in that you're responsible for interacting with, and dealing with the inefficiency of them not being trained is also like more work for you.
yeah, and the thing is, it's not the turnover where they leave the company.
Right.
It's more of like they're getting rotated, right? So
Right.
there's a lot of movement in our call centers and in our
yeah.
regions because they really do a lot of lateral moves, right?
Yeah.
So you get experience in originations, credit, like
Right.
customer service, like they're not stuck doing the same job for more than a year.
Right. Right.
So it's to really grow their agents, their associates. And then whereas in the corporate side, with management, they get sent to other departments, they get sent to other states, if we have another office there.
Yeah.
But still, it's like I'm I or all the workers that are in my department, they have to prove
Right.
their
So
experience.
that's also really interesting, right? Because on the one hand, you could look at it and go, rotating people around and cross-training them and giving them a lot of experiences with the company is really good for the company.
Yes.
Has advantages for the company.
Yes.
But then there is a trade-off. There's a downside to doing that. And one of those is the ruptured sort of relationships and the knowledge and having to rebuild connections with new people all the time.
Correct.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I'm curious, going kind of away from the workplace thing, about kind of where you were at when you were a student, right? And it's like, if you could go back in time to back when you were student, Mireya, and you could give yourself some advice, like what would you tell yourself?
I feel like my situation was a little bit different compared to other college students.
Right.
So I was a teen parent, so my options were very narrow.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And also time constraints, right? I didn't have as much time to do as many things as I wished.
Right.
So if I could talk to myself, I feel like I did a good job with the options that I had.
Yeah.
But I would have started networking earlier.
Right.
Not just the last year. I would have also done more research to really see what resources I had.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like there was a lot of resources, but maybe I wasn't aware of them, or
Right.
maybe I was afraid to ask.
Okay. So when you say resources were available, but you didn't know, like what kind of stuff are you thinking about?
Just, networking groups.
Yeah.
Maybe there was something out there for other parents that were going to school, support
Right.
groups.
Right.
Because going to school, being a full-time mother,
Yeah.
it's pretty hard,
I can
mentally
imagine. Yeah.
and emotionally. So just having someone else be there that maybe was going through the same and just supporting each other.
Right.
Maybe even I don't know, sometimes there was a lot of times where I had to stay later during the day to do work on projects.
Yeah.
And it was hard for me to really find time to make it work.
Right.
So I was hard on myself sometimes, maybe I'm not participating as much as I should, or
Right.
the others, but it was just my situation was different.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would have done more research. I wouldn't have been afraid to ask for more favors, right?
Right.
For a babysitter, so I could come,
Right.
do
more of those things.
do more work.
Yeah.
And
So it's interesting. So we don't have at Cal State Long Beach much of a support system for students who are parenting.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Or
Or you just don't know about it?
The resource that I had was the Isabel Patterson Development Center, which is it's like it was like a 2-year wait list just to
Yeah.
get my son enrolled. But
Right.
because I was a student here and I was low income, I
Right.
was helped with, I didn't have to pay
Right.
for that.
Right.
To me, that was the best resource possible because it
Right.
allowed me to come to my classes and then pick up my son afterwards.
Right.
So I feel like if I didn't have that help, I honestly would have had to drop out of college at some
Right.
point.
Yeah. So I think I have this correct. They're redoing that resource center, and they had to close it for a semester, and until they can get into a new facility. So for the parents who are students, that must have been and must still be, because I think they're still closed, really hard for them.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Huh. And I know faculty members. It's the same program that faculty members also have?
Yes,
Yeah.
correct.
So I know
it
faculty
was
members.
workers,
Right.
faculty, and students.
Yeah, I know a lot of faculty members were really upset about it and having to make other arrangements. But, I think most of the faculty members, at least, they could probably afford to find alternatives. But I can imagine for some of the students, it's really a hardship. So hopefully they'll get that back up and open as soon as possible.
Yeah. I mean, I I wish I could go back and like really tell myself a lot of things being a college student, right?
Yeah.
I know there was a lot of not job fairs, but like when all of the different groups that were available on campus, they would like gather outside of the library.
Right.
I wish I had stopped by, like given that more time.
Yeah. Just to build some connections and see what's going on.
Yeah, not be hesitant to like stop and ask, hey,
Right.
like what are you guys about? Like, you know, are you willing to work with me, you know, on the
Right.
schedule, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I felt like I isolated myself a lot in some way.
How much of that is just like your hands are really full-time student, full-time parent, and you're just like, I just don't have time to like look into this stuff. And how much of it was just like you felt sort of for whatever reason, constrained or shy or just hesitant to reach out? Like how much of it was like you really just didn't have time, and how much it was just like, do I really want to? Because right, it's emotionally taxing to reach out and connect with other people. So
I felt like maybe 50-50, right? Because I had to ride 2 buses just to get to school. So I would rush to make sure I caught both of the buses on time. Yeah. And I think a lot of college students could relate, you know, some people rode the metro or the bus. Yeah. So it was hard for me, you know, to make sure I got on the bus on time, then dropped my son off at daycare and then ran to my classes. Right. You know, and then it's like when you're in class, you don't really have time to work on your assignment. It's more like you learn, and then you have the extra hours of work. Right. So in between, you know, I had to like try to snack on something or rush to my other class. And then in my small breaks, you know, I would try to get some work done. Yeah. Then go pick up my son, and then the same thing. I would get home really late. Right. Sometimes I would have to come back to work on a project, so that was another commute. Yeah. And so it was that time constraint, but it was more of like me isolating myself because I kind of felt like I didn't belong. I've said it many times, I'm my worst critique, right? Like, right. I really had to, even now, like when I'm at work, sometimes I feel like, you know, these people, you know, like they come from families that have education, right. You know, I'm the first in my family to have a career, you know. So it's hard to find that you do belong there, that you did work hard to be there. So I felt that way when I was in college, like kind of like an outcast. Like I really pushed myself to get here. Like, you know, math wasn't my forte. I had to really study. And to some students, it just came naturally, you know. Right. Like they knew what college was about. They were having fun. It was me, like, just really struggling. Yeah. Like, I have to graduate. I have to get a good career. Right. You know, like, get a career where I could find a good job. Yeah. I feel like that was a lot of the reason to why I chose my major. Yeah. Like, what do I like versus my reality, right? Yeah. How is the economy? Who are they hiring, right? So since I already had a kid, that's what I'm saying, where my choices were very narrow. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's interesting, too, though. It's like, so, you know, we have a outreach for languages like non-traditional students, right? So if you have students that are first generation college attendees, we're like reaching out. If you have students that are like working moms or working dads, right, low income, there are these like programs to get those people into college. But it sounds like once you're in, though, it's still hard to feel like you're in the right place or you should be there, and that creates all of its own challenges. Like you come into the situation, but then you don't necessarily you know, people are like, do I really belong here? And then that creates a struggle for them. That's interesting. I wonder, like, what are the things that can be done so that, you know, students like that don't feel that way? I mean, I guess one is like, if you're one of those students and you're listening, hey, don't feel that way, right? You belong here and you could be successful. But I just wonder, like, what more the school, the university can do to help people feel welcome and make sure that they know that they're where they should be. It's an interesting question.
And then I noticed, so I don't know if you know this, but I changed my major several times. Okay. I came in as a criminal justice major.
Oh,
And then I changed that
okay.
to social work.
Okay.
And then I finally chose business.
Okay.
So it's a whole different community in each of the different sections, right?
Yep,
So
for
like
sure.
criminal justice completely different.
Yeah.
I got a little sense of the different areas of Cal State Long Beach, and just each area has like their own little community,
Right.
right? So I feel like that also helped me a little bit to find my way and like understand what I wanted, and had a little bit more like view of like the different options in school. But it, like I said, it's just a lot of information, and then the school is so divided into like the different schools, right?
Yeah, the colleges all have their own thing.
Yeah.
They're really independent of
So
each
that's
other.
another challenge too, right?
Yeah.
They're so focused on those resources,
Right.
whereas there's like a need for it overall.
So relative to like the other colleges and the other things that you've seen, I mean, for the College of Business, like how good are the resources for students?
I feel like what I liked about the College of Business was that everything is literally in like one place.
Mm-hmm.
So we have our counselors there.
Yeah.
I don't remember her name, but she would actually email me to make sure to see how I was doing.
Right. Okay.
How my grades were, and like just because I always asked, can you help me like really map out what classes I need? This is the path, but I have no idea what I'm supposed to select.
Right.
Right. And I feel like she actually took the time to explain that to me.
That's great.
And also really explained when we would have like career fairs, and also like break it down to me like the different groups, that the networking groups that they had specific for business.
Right.
I feel like through her was that I learned about the International Student Business Association.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so I feel like it's like reaching out to a counselor.
Right.
And asking and being like honest, like I don't know what's out there. I know where I want to go, but can you point me in the right direction? And I felt so like, it didn't feel like I was talking to a counselor, like that was just doing her job. Like it actually felt like she cared.
Right.
So I feel like that made the difference. I didn't feel like a burden going to ask her, you know, like I'm taking her time. No, it was more like...
So she actually cared to make sure that you were getting what you needed.
Yeah.
That's good. That's great. That's good to know. Interesting. So you maybe have a little bit more experience with this than, say, students who are, you know, who don't have that challenge of being a student and a mom at the same time. But I'm curious about, like, now that you're working, like, how have you managed to balance that kind of professional versus, you know, the sort of family, personal type of stuff, right? Like, are you able to find work-life balance? What do you do to make it happen?
When I graduated, like I mentioned, when we had that career fair, I applied for an internship at Honda. At the same time, I applied to become a deputy sheriff trainee.
I remember.
So I actually went as far as taking the polygraph. So I did the ride-along, the physical, the intake, the background check, everything. So I was really, like, just manifesting, you know, like, I need a job. I need a stable job because I need income for my son, right? And it was going to be, I was looking at mandatory overtime. I was looking at being away from my son, you know, like, to get the training and stuff, which it was good money because, you know, I had a bachelor's and then I was bilingual. Right. So that looked good, but then I wouldn't have any time realistically with my son.
Right.
And on the other hand, I was really hoping to get that internship because the hours would be better. So when I was doing the internship, I was doing the whole process to become a deputy sheriff. Right. And in those 3 months when I kept applying at Honda to try to get an associate position and I landed that job, I was so happy because that meant I didn't have to follow through with the sheriff path.
Yeah.
At Honda, the hours work to where I work 7 to 4.
Okay.
So I'm able to take a break to take my son to school.
Right.
Right. Currently, because of COVID, you know, we started doing remote job.
Okay.
So that started in 2020. My daughter was born in 2019. So I had just gone back from maternity leave. She was a couple of months.
Right.
So I didn't really have to leave her that much.
Right.
So this whole time I've been raising her while I've been working from home. So that you could say that's a blessing in disguise, right?
Yeah. Does the remote work make that easier? Or is it, with the remote work, there's a potential for it to like take over?
When we began working from home, she was a newborn, so it was hard to really, because we are in a lot of meetings, right? We still have to be productive. It's not like, oh, you get to slack off. No. So I literally learned to work with having her in my lap or sitting her next to me or like moving my laptop around. Just you find ways to make it work.
Yeah.
You know, and I feel like we proved to the company that we're able to deliver as good or even better working remote. So I feel like that's helped me a lot. It helps me in the sense I don't have to drive back home and then take off. So my work-life balance right now works because I'm able to take, my daughter does cheerleading and she does ballet folklorico.
Oh, okay.
So let's say I clock out at 4. You know, I hurry up and get her ready and then drive off to the park.
Right.
Instead of waiting that hour in traffic.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and then just being able to clock out at 4, especially when it's like, when it gets dark outside during the winter times, it feels like if I was working a 9 to 5, you know, I wouldn't have any time to do any of those things.
Right.
So that's really helped me get my kids involved. Like my son does boxing. He's done soccer in the past, basketball. So I don't work weekends, which is another great thing. Right. So that's why I feel like I have that huge love for my company because I don't work weekends.
Right.
I work 7 to 4. You know, I get to work remote.
So Honda gives you that space then to actually carve out some time for yourself, for your family, to make sure that you have that.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, though, because it's like, you know, when we're talking about challenges and we're talking about career advancement and you're talking about establishing a reputation, right? So it's like you are having to work hard and you are having to prove yourself, right?
Yes.
So how are you doing that while still maintaining that time for your family?
Well, working remote, right? It was full remote, and then it went, at least in my other department, it was like once a month. But my particular job, since I still had to like see like physical documents, I would have to go in more time. So they saw that, you know. I also didn't move away from the company. Like other people took advantage of working from home. I could have moved to, let's say, Victorville, right?
Right.
And now it's like, now that we're starting to go back into the office more time, like it went from like once a month to 2 times a month to now it's like once a week.
Right.
You know, like you see who really would take the time to drive back to work and actually show, you know, that they care about submitting, you know, whatever needs to be done.
Right.
But sorry, I feel like I'm going off the grid.
No, that's all right. That's good. So I guess is it just a matter of, okay, I end at 4, but it's like while I'm on the clock, I'm just going to work really hard to get the work done, and that's enough. Instead of like, you know, some people are just like, and maybe it's just some companies demand it, but it's just like, oh, they're working all the time, so they're working at night and they're working on the weekends and.
No, so that's the thing, right? We have a lot of meetings.
Yeah.
Team meetings especially, we have a lot of one-on-ones.
Right.
So they see, we monitor a lot of our work because we have a lot of shared documents where we talk about what we're working on, the projects we're working on. So we give a lot of project updates so they know, you could tell when someone's slacking off.
Sure.
And then not only that, but like I mentioned, you know, I'm working on different projects, NH Circle. Right. I was chosen for Ignite Your Future, which is a leadership class.
Right.
So on top of the work that I do and the projects that I do, and also monitoring like tickets or anything that come in, I don't know if you noticed, but in teams you could tell when someone's been away, right?
Right. Right.
So, we're very available all the time. We respond to emails like in less than 2 days, the norm,
Right.
like 2 business days.
Yeah.
So in our one-on-ones, if there was such slack, they would bring that up. But
Okay.
thankfully I haven't had that issue.
Right.
And
So it's just a matter of you're using the time that you
Wisely.
have wisely and getting stuff done.
Exactly.
And it's not that you have to spend all this time outside of that, working and working and working.
Yeah. And it's just the meetings that they hold, they're very engaging. They try to
Okay.
make it fun, like our team meetings that we have.
Mm-hmm.
And just our one-on-ones, they are very, they feel like they relate to you, right? Like, tell me how hard things, what are you working on?
Right.
Are you having any difficulties with anything? Like, how can I help you?
No, that's good.
They're very personalized.
Uh-huh.
So you feel like even maybe in that week that you didn't get to talk to your boss or your supervisor, you're able to catch on and ask questions. And I also appreciate the team meetings because I know what others are working on,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you don't feel like you're doing more workload
Right.
than others.
Right.
It feels equal.
That's good. So last question is, how do you define success? Like, what does that mean to you? And has your definition evolved since you were a student?
Definitely.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, even with the American dream, right? Back in the day, I would be like, it's having a career, right? Your
Right.
college degree, getting your house,
Right.
working a corporate job.
Right.
That's what I thought
Uh-huh.
the American dream was. I mean, I came from a humble background. No one
Yeah.
went to college. We didn't own a home,
Right.
anything. So now I feel like success is having a work-life balance,
Mm-hmm.
not being stagnant
Right.
career-wise. If you feel like you have become that subject matter expert, sometimes it's like start looking for a way to look for promotion.
Mm-hmm.
It's having a good work relationship with your peers.
Right.
I feel like success is like when people know, oh, that's Mireya, she does a good job.
Yeah. So
Like
having
building
a
a good reputation.
Yeah.
And then when I'm talking about life balance, I feel like I have really close friends, like maybe I could say 5 at least that I've known since middle school.
Right.
And I know that as an adult, sometimes you lose track of what they're doing.
Right.
But just knowing that at least you check up on them at least on their kids' birthdays or once a year,
Yeah.
Having that balance, that I have someone I could reach out to and talk to them.
So taking the time to stay connected to people that matter to you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And now that my family is away, my parents don't live with me and they're out of
Right.
state.
Right.
I feel like just really having that bonding connection with my parents. So, having that respectful, good reputation at work,
Yeah.
spending time with your family and having at least a handful of friends, I feel like that's a good balance.
Yeah.
Money-wise, maybe that's difficult talking about living in California.
Yeah. Right.
But, I mean, it's just the cost of living is insane, so I can't say to me success is money because the more money you make, the more expenses you have. So,
Right. It's very easy to find things to spend that money on.
yeah, so I don't think that my focus is earning more money.
Right.
I don't feel like money's going to bring me happiness.
Yeah. But the other things are more important.
Yeah.
So anything next that you have specific in mind, or is it just keep plugging away?
It's funny that you asked me that because I just spoke to a couple of my, I spoke to my assistant manager, one of the senior managers, you know, like I'm mapping out where I see myself in 5 years.
Right.
And I wish to become a supervisor, maybe even an assistant manager, right?
Right.
With that being said, though, like I mentioned, work-life balance is very important to me, especially because my kids are still young.
Yeah.
If I make that move, there's more responsibility with that. So I may have to focus more on work and not have as much time for my family.
Right.
It might not be working overtime, but maybe mentally I'll be thinking about what I have to do, all my responsibilities, more pressure.
Yep.
So I received really good feedback of do what's best for you in this season. Mm-hmm. So maybe 5 years from now, I might be ready for that.
Right.
But for now, it's like I'm enjoying my peace, that I'm feel comfortable where I'm at. I'm learning more projects. I'm trying to become a subject matter expert with different vendors and what I'm doing. So I'll feel like I have a greater skill set and be a better asset in that position in 5 years. But maybe now's not the right time.
And then at that point, you'll be ready to take that. Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting. Like, I took a long time to finish my PhD because I knew that as a student, I had the flexibility to spend a lot more time with my kids. And I just, like, I was not in a rush to get out, even though some people would say, like, well, you take a long time, you should be working, and you should get your professor job as soon as possible. But I was like, it's worth it for me to spend the time with the kids. This is where I'm at right now. So I think understanding yourself and what matters to you is a really important thing for people to have.
But it's hard because I have in the back of my mind cost of living.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I was even thinking about getting another job.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But, you know, I spoke to someone at work who has been there for years, and he told me, I understand it might be difficult, and it's sad to hear that someone with a college degree and a good job has to get a second job. Right? But, you know, challenging times happen, but they're not going to last forever. And I know this because I've been there, right? When I was going to school. So I'm trying to really think that is a reality. Stop stressing out.
Yeah.
Use those free hours to spend quality time with the kids.
Yeah.
And things will work out. It's just cutting back on certain things. You know, I don't want to leave a company where I have a good work-life balance and then go work in a company where I'm working overtime the weekends and having no time with my kids.
Yeah.
So it's hard, you know. I have that in the back of my mind sometimes, like, you're not doing enough. You have to pay all these bills, but I am doing good enough.
Yeah. I think we pressure ourselves too much, and honestly, it took me a really long time to kind of find my pace. So, you're probably in a much better position now than I was when I was your age in terms of having your stuff together.
Really?
Yeah. I was kind of, I wouldn't say a mess, but I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know my career. I was kind of all over the place.
And that's another thing too. Like, I wish I could hear from other people my age. Right. Am I doing good? Yeah. Do you think that I'm doing a good job? Yeah. I was a single mother, went to school, now I have a career, but I don't own a home. Right. But again, the American dream has changed.
Well, and again, some people are going to be farther ahead and some people aren't. And it's just like, I wasn't a parent, and when I was your age, I still didn't have my stuff together. I still didn't know what I was going to do. I was all over the place. So I think it's just like, you know, you do what you're doing, and, you know, you're making progress and you're moving forward. And with all of these things that you're carrying, it seems really good, and you got a lot of time to, like, make more and do more.
Thank you.
Yeah. So it's been a real pleasure talking with you again, and I'm really happy that you came back and were willing to sit down with me for this conversation.
No, thank you for having me. And if it helps any student, you know, if you hear back, let me know.
Yeah.
You know, I hope that what I've said, and it's genuine, you know, if I've opened up a lot about my life and my struggles and even now what I'm going through, right?
Yeah.
But if it could help someone else, you know, that they might be going through a rough time, They might not have a kid, but they might have some other obstacles,
Yep.
that they can do it. And things don't get easier, but they're manageable.
Yeah.
And to look for support.
Yep.
Not wait.
And not wait until the last minute.
Yeah.
Yeah. But thank you so much, Mireya. It's been really great talking with you.
You're welcome.
Thank you all for joining us today at Beyond the Beach. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. And if you're enjoying the show, please consider subscribing on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. And for those of you who want to go the extra mile, leave a review or comment. I'd love to hear from you.